103.2 Dublin City FM. Dublin radio at its best. 103.2 Dublin City FM. Exciting radio for our exciting city.
May I have your attention, please?
You need passion. You need desire. You need one. We play with that passion. We play together. We play for each other. And we play to win. We are Notre Dame.
Yes, it's time for the Notre Dame report with my good colleague from across the ocean, Len Clark. Len, welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon, Declan. This report made possible by Indiana Dunes Tourism. Learn about the newest national park in the United States by going to Indiana Dunes. With that out of the way, Declan, not much to talk about. It ugly last night, weather-wise, you got for Michigan, but even uglier on the pitch.
Yes, I believe it wasn't the sort of result we were looking for.
45-14, Michigan defeats Notre Dame. Michigan rated 19th in the country. The Fighting Irish were ranked 8th, with a record of 5-1, but they leave the big house with the loss and are now 5-2. And they've got another tough game against Virginia Tech at home this Saturday. But Declan, it was a game where Notre Dame had 2 weeks to prepare for the Michigan Wolverines. They came out very flat. They were not able to pass the ball. They were not able to run the ball. A couple of injuries. Tony Jones Jr., the leading rusher for the Irish, left in the second quarter with a rib injury. And then also in the second quarter, Tommy Kramer, who's been a big stalwart on that side of the offensive line, leaves a sprained knee. And so that just added some insult to injury as Michigan just really put a wallop behind the Fighting Irish. It's not won in Ann Arbor since 2005. It was the first game in the big house for the Irish since the 2013 season. And now with 2 losses, this is the most losses Notre Dame has had since the 2017 season.
Okay, we're having problems with the line, Len. We're going to try and persist, and if we can't get an improved line, what we might do is we might take a song and ring you back. It's kind of coming. It's kind of coming and going at the moment.
Okay.
It's actually better now than it was five seconds ago. Anyways, the closest they got for the boys was I think they got to within 10 points at one point, but then Michigan just pulled away.
It was 17-0 at the half, but the Fighting Irish did come out in the third quarter. They scored a touchdown, as you said, 17-7. But in the next possession, Michigan, with a big run by Hassan Haskins, who ended up with 149 yards rushing on 20 carries. I'll just tell you a little bit about the Notre Dame had 31 rushes for only a total of 47 yards. That just shows you that 2 players on Michigan had more yards than the whole Notre Dame team as far as rushing the football. Notre Dame had a chance to prevent some defensive penalties. They had 2 pass interference footballs. The second one was in the end zone to put the ball on the 2-yard line, and Michigan punched it in and ended up running up the score to 45-14.
Okay, we're going to bring that one piece of good news from a Fighting Irish point of view. Was we're going to bring you the commentary, as we call it over here, that led to the touchdown.
Book from the shotgun. McKinley in motion. Takes it, rolls out to his right, sets up, throws back across the field, wide open, goal commit, touchdown.
That was the score that made it 17-7. But as you just mentioned earlier, Michigan pretty much pulled away after that, and any further scoring was just making the score look slightly less ugly.
Yeah, it was one of the very few highlights for Fighting Irish fans. But last night, passing-wise, Ian Book with his worst collegiate game in his career. He was only 8 of 25 passing for a total of 73 yards. He had 1 touchdown pass, and that was to Cole Kmet. Phil Jurkovec came in late in the fourth quarter for a number of reasons. As Notre Dame couldn't move the ball, but Coach Brian Kelly did not want to risk Ian Book getting hurt in a game that was already decided with that 45-14 score. And so Phil Jurkovec comes in and gets that second touchdown pass for the Fighting Irish on the night. And that was the pass to Javon McKinley for the touchdown, making that score 45-14. But In the post-game, Coach Brian Kelly just was a little perplexed, and the players were very down as far as their performance, and a lot of work this week. They'll have to look at the game tape to find out what was not working and why, and then try to get prepared for a very good Virginia Tech team out of the Atlantic Coast Conference. And this is really going to test the mettle of this team next week. They could still finish the season with a 10-2 record and go to a very good bowl game, but a loss against Virginia Tech, and some people would say, is this really the wheels derailing the train?
Yes, that would be a disaster if they racked up another L at this point in the season.
And another interesting stat is Notre Dame punted the ball away 10 times last night, and freshman Jay Bramlett really got a workout. We were saying he was doing water aerobics with all the rain last night. But Michigan and Notre Dame are two of the all-time winningest programs in college football. It was the 44th meeting. The last time that Notre Dame and Michigan met was at Notre Dame Stadium back in the 2018 season, and Notre Dame shut them out. But Michigan had their backs against the wall. Coach Jim Harbaugh was playing for his job, and he kind of won some of his fan base last night with a very good performance all around, offensively, defensively, special teams. And when you play a game, there's going to be a winner and a loser. But the most disappointing thing for Irish fans is that the Irish did not come out and compete last night against Michigan.
So how does he turn it around in the 5 days or so between the games?
Well, we're going to find out in about a half hour when we get on a phone call with Coach Brian Kelly to get an update on the injuries, and then he'll have some final comments on the Michigan game. But he says it was a 2.5-hour bus ride back to South Bend. They'll take a look at some videotape to find out what did not work in their game preparation. They'll try to reevaluate and then put in the game plan against Virginia Tech. And it really involves personnel. Who are the individuals who are doing the job? And that was one of the distractions this past week is wide receiver Michael Young announced that he's going to transfer. He didn't even play last night. And so Brendan Lindsey was the third wide receiver who started last night. And so that did not have an impact on the game, but it seems like anytime that you're starting to prepare, something like that pops up and dominates the thinking of the coaches. I call it the paper cuts. They're the most painless, but they really don't do a lot of damage, but they're a little annoying. And so right now the Fighting Irish are annoyed. They need to coach better. They need to execute better. They need to stay healthy. And as you said, 5 days away, it's a short turnaround to try to get back into a proper frame of mind. That's why this game is so important. And we'll tell you about the character of this team is what kind of team is it? Will they respond and deal with the adversity that has been presented to them?
Yeah, and it'll be a real test of character for some of the younger players, probably the more inexperienced ones in the lineup, in terms of can they rise to the occasion and flip it over in such a short turnaround time?
Well, Declan, that's a very good point. Is the younger players, this is their first experience in college football. They're looking to the upperclassmen for leadership. And how they will perform for the next 4 years will be determined about the leadership that they're being taught. And so that's very important that the leaders on this team really step up, become more vocal, communicate, and in a sense become additional coaches on the field. But the players are the ones who are going to have to get it done. The coaches can put them in a position to win by putting a game plan together, but the players are the ones that have to go out there and execute. And it's easy for us in the media and fans to sit back and be Monday morning quarterbacks, but it's really on the players right now. And the other factor is, as we said, Notre Dame had 2 weeks to play, prepare for the Michigan game, but it was a bye week last week. And I know I'm a little burned out just in terms of covering football. I can only imagine the players and how this season has taken a toll on them, not only emotionally, but also physically.
Could it be that the fact that they had such, they had a week off from the football end of things, but they had a pretty heavy examination schedule in the off week, that maybe their brains are just a little bit fried?
That could be a little bit of it, but I really think the loss at Penn State by Michigan really prompted them to come in with a little extra and saying, hey, we got beat. We've already got 2 losses. A third loss is an embarrassment to this program. And so playing at home gave them a little bit of extra confidence. The weather was a factor last night, but Coach Jim Harbaugh said, hey, his players love playing in those elements. And they went out there and proved that they were the better team last night. And Notre Dame will probably drop out of the top 10. They're currently rated 8th. I look at them dropping down to maybe even number 15. It was a great opportunity for Notre Dame to move up because there were some losses yesterday in college football, especially Oklahoma, that was undefeated. And Notre Dame would have had a chance to rise up to possibly number 6 or number 5 in the country. But now all the talks about a national championship, getting back to the college football playoff, are out of the question. Right now, the goal is to finish with 10 wins and get to a high-tier bowl game that will pay dividends in terms of recruiting. And right now, there are a lot of answers that need to be, questions that need to be answered, and I think you're exactly right. The young players need to have that leadership taught to them by example.
Now, what's the temperatures like in Indiana looking forward to next weekend? Because we mentioned the conditions in the big house yesterday. Are Notre Dame going to be featuring similar conditions or possibly even worse ones in next week's game?
Well, the old saying in Indiana is that the weather will change every 10 minutes. It's kind of like Ireland, where you can experience every season in one day. Last night, the temperature was about 50 degrees. It was unbearable rain, and right now I'm looking out my window. The skies are sunny, and it's 60 degrees, but the temperatures are going down this week. So I think the early forecast that I saw for game day is that it will be partly cloudy at about 48 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's football weather.
Yeah.
But throw the weather conditions out. Notre Dame just needs to go out there and protect their house, play the type of football that they're capable of. And Virginia Tech is a team that came into Notre Dame Stadium a couple of years ago and beat them. Notre Dame went down to Virginia Tech last year and beat them, but Virginia Tech is a perennial power. It's not going to be a cakewalk. It's really going to be a physical test for the Fighting Irish. But I think, as you have mentioned, that it's also a mental one as well. And so 5 days, not a lot of time. Throw the class schedule in there as well. And so they're going to be burning the candle at both ends this week to try to find some answers.
Now, we mentioned the schedule there a while back, and you mentioned that there aren't too many road games left. Is it 2 or 3 that are left?
There's 2 more after the Michigan game last night. So they come back home this Saturday against Virginia Tech. Then they go on the road to Durham, North Carolina to take on the Blue Devils. They come back home to face Navy and Boston College, and then they finish the season on the road in Stanford, out in the San Francisco area in Palo Alto, California. Yeah,
that's the longest. That's the longest journey, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the longest journey. But the goal is to get that 10 wins. But that's very tough to do. Duke got beat by North Carolina yesterday, but they're playing good football. Stanford is always a tough place to win for Notre Dame. And when the season began, I told you my prediction would have been 9-3. It really depends on next weekend. If they defeat Virginia Tech and have some momentum, that 10-2 record is a great possibility. But it even could go down to an 8-4, a 7-5, and we will find out next week when we talk on the ball.
Now, you mentioned Coach Harbaugh was kind of under pressure at Michigan, but he's still under pressure because if they record another couple of losses, he could be looking for his pink slip.
He's always under pressure. These college football coaches at high-profile programs like Michigan and Notre Dame, Jim Harbaugh is always rumored to be going back to the NFL. So this win will give him a little breathing room with the alumni, but you're only as good as your last game. So they've got a game next week against their in-state rival, the Michigan. I think the next home game is against Michigan State. They go on the road next week. But you're only as good as your next week's game, and so that Notre Dame win will be forgotten if Jim Harbaugh loses next week.
Now, Notre Dame have Virginia Tech, as you mentioned. What's Virginia Tech's record like in Notre Dame?
I haven't seen their score yesterday, so just let me do a quick search on Virginia Tech and find out what their record is. And thank goodness we have some of these computer programs that could help us out and find that. So Virginia Tech was beaten. No, that's earlier in this year, so that's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that one right
No problem. So, I mean, like, will Virginia Tech go into Notre Dame sort of with a lot of confidence, or will they be saying, oh, we never win here? That's what I was kind of trying to get at.
only played at Notre Dame Stadium once, and they brought their whole fan base, and they made a whole weekend out of it. They were in Chicago, and then they came over to Notre Dame Stadium, and their colors are maroon and orange and gold, and so the stadium had a lot of those colors in there. Mm-hmm. And they're going to bring a big crew, and their record is 5-2 right now.
Yeah.
And then yesterday they defeated North Carolina in 6 overtimes.
Okay.
43-41.
Yeah.
And so
tight game.
That was a battle.
Yeah, tight game.
So, and then Virginia Tech had a bye last week, so they had a little chance to prepare for Notre Dame. I know they were watching that game against Michigan, and they could see some of the vulnerabilities of the Fighting Irish, and so Coach Kelly has to find out what he can do to counter that. And it's a 24/7 hour job, and you can talk about it, but you need to execute.
Now, do Coach Kelly and his staff have anybody coming back to availability who's previously been hurt?
Well, Jafar Armstrong was hurt in the opening game against Louisville. He saw limited action against USC, and that's why we're really excited that Jafar was back in the lineup, because that gave Notre Dame 2 very good running backs with Tony Jones Jr. and Jafar Armstrong. And Jafar's strength is that he was recruited as a wide receiver, and he can catch the ball coming out of the backfield. But with Tony Jones Jr. coming down and Jafar Armstrong, maybe not 100%, that really affected the Notre Dame running game last night. They just could not get anything running last night, and I'm going to go back and take a look at the carries by Jafar last night. Jafar Armstrong, I don't think he carried the ball last night. So he was a non-factor in the ball game.
So if they could get the ball to Jafar Armstrong next Saturday, it's another attacking option for Coach Kelly and indeed quarterback Ian Book.
I think Coach Kelly would like to get the ball to anybody that would be able to do something with the football, and so it's really going back to square one. Go back to the fundamentals. Find out what is working. If it's mechanical, you can fix that in practice. But the big thing last night was the running game was shut down by the Michigan defense. The passing game was shut down. A lot of that with the weather conditions. But Ian Book was pressured all night. He was running out of the pocket and was just scrambling for his life. And so the offensive line really needs to up their game. But when you lose your right guard with Tommy Kramer last night and bring in another player, that kind of affects that chemistry. And Notre Dame is a very good football team, but it's like Ireland getting defeated in the rugby world championships. They get beat by a team that was a very good team. They got beat by New Zealand, but Ireland was also beaten by Japan, and Japan, if they played again, would probably lose to Ireland. But on any given Saturday in college football, anything could happen, and some people have a bad day at the office, and Notre Dame had a bad day at the office yesterday.
Did Book suffer many sacks yesterday?
Yeah, he was sacked many times. Ian Book was sacked, I believe, 4 times last night, but he was also pressured a lot. He had to run out of the pocket, and so he just never looked very comfortable in there last night because he had no time to really look at his options. And I know your favorite player on the team, Chase Claypool out of British Columbia. He was a factor early on, but he only caught 2 passes. But Ian Book did not have a chance to throw the ball downfield to Chase because that was shut down by the Michigan defense.
Did Ian Book have to throw out of bounds a couple of times?
Yeah, he got rid of the ball a few times just to avoid losing yardage and getting a sack, but that just means that Michigan saw something in the offensive lineup that Notre Dame was doing, and they brought a package to put the pressure on. And it also was a combination of Notre Dame's offensive line not responding. And so everything that we talked about might have been factored, but the bottom line is a loss is a loss. You learn from the loss. There's a rule at Notre Dame that you have 24 hours to celebrate a win or deal with the loss, and then it's back to business. And so Brian Kelly will be on the phone with us in about 10 minutes. He'll give his final thoughts, and then everything is into game prep mode for Virginia Tech Hokies. And this is a game that I'm really interested to see because the way that Notre Dame responds on Saturday is going to tell us a lot about this team. I hope they will address some of the issues. If not, it really could be the unraveling of the 2019 football team.
So, what does your gut tell you? Do you think the guys have the capacity to show some resilience and come back and get that win that we all hope they do get?
I think everybody has a chance to redeem themselves from the resiliency. The good thing is that they're playing back at home. They're sleeping in their own beds. They're in their own environment. It's up to them. So we will meet with Coach Brian Kelly on Monday. We'll talk to the players on Tuesday. We'll get a little bit of an idea. And then by Friday, we'll have an idea of who is going to be prepared for this game, who is going to start, what the challenges might be. But at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time next Saturday at Notre Dame Stadium, that's where everything comes to fruition. You know, when the pen meets the paper, we'll find out how that script is going to be written.
Okay, Len. So we wish the guys the best of luck on next Saturday, and we look forward to talking to you. Now, next week there's live commentary from a GAA game, so I'll talk to you off mic about what we might try and do with regard to getting the slot covered. But we might have to do a double whammy the following weekend. So unfortunately, it starts at 4 and probably will only be ending about now this time next week.
Well, we call that an audible, and we'll have to take what the defense gives to us, but we'll be prepared and try to get our game plan together to have a good report next week on the ball.
Okay, I said I'll let you know what the story is, but I'm pretty sure that there's a possibility we may have to do a double one the following week. But once I have the logistics worked out, because it's we have live commentary of these club Gaelic football games, and there's a final on next Sunday. In fact, there's a final on in the Gaelic football. There's 2 soccer finals on, which I'm actually going to, and there's a field hockey Olympic qualifier all on next Sunday.
That sounds like a big weekend of sports coming up, and if we can get on next week, that's great. If not, we'll have the double whammy, as you said, and we'll maybe have 2 positive notes to talk about, the Notre Dame game with Virginia Tech and the Duke game as well.
Well, fingers and toes crossed for that eventual outcome. Len, thank you so much for joining me on the programme.
Have a great week.
And that brings our Notre Dame report to a close for this week.